The battle for the future of conservatism lies in Arkansas's second congressional district. Chase McDowell is attempting to replace incumbent French Hill in the GOP primary in Arkansas. He joins me now. Thank you so much, Chase, for being on the program.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you having me, and good afternoon. I think you're out in California, and we're here in Arkansas, still frozen in. So I'm sure you probably have warmer weather than I do right now.
Yes, I do. We're pretty lucky when it comes to weather. Let's get into your campaign. Why are you running for Congress?
Well, so I have spent a lifetime. I first worked in independent pharmacy, and I saw all the struggles that we're facing with healthcare. Of course, I'd worked in multiple states across the country trying to fix that and address that through PBMs and different situations like that. And what I kept meeting was politicians that were bought and paid for by the monopolies and the insurance companies. And some of the worst ones that I was having to fight against were some here in Arkansas, French Hill being one of those. So I decided, you know what? I fixed a lot of states across the republic. Let's go home, where of course I'm from, and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. I'm going to be the congressman for everybody. That's the working man. And we're going to try to fix this healthcare so it's not our largest expenditure for not only families but corporations across the board. I really think it doesn't matter what political spectrum you fall into. You are aware that healthcare is pretty bad in America, and that was one of my main reasons for doing it. And then, of course, being a former small business owner, my family being former small business owners, just seeing the struggles that they go through when big corporations get subsidies that small businesses do not. So I wanted to address the problems and issues that we face across the board for everybody.
On the campaign trail, something or discussed on your campaign website is faith, and you're someone who really values your Christian faith. How will you weave in your Christian values with your plans for policy?
So, across the board, what I mean by that when I say faith is yes, I'm a very faithful Christian, and that's the way that I view my life. Okay. But also, I know on a federal level, I'm not trying to impose my faith on anyone. What I'm actually trying to do is more of a libertarian stance to where we get out as the government gets out of our faith, because I don't think that that's fair nor just. So I want to make sure that everybody, however they believe. Of course, I want everyone to be Christian, but I'm not going to force it on folks. I've got to do that by the way that I live and the way that I act, and hopefully people will become Christians from that. But I'm trying to protect religion as a whole. I feel like the government during 2020 got too involved in churches, telling us when we can and cannot assembly or have an assembly and assemble together. That is a violation of the First Amendment, and I want to stand firm against that. So I want to protect my faith, but also the faith of everybody else that's out there, even if I disagree. As being a Christian, that means that I love and care for everybody. So I know that a lot of Republican politicians come out and they say that they're pro-life, but I think they're pro-birth. I'm pro-life. I want to make sure that I'm protecting children outside of the womb. I think that's definitely an American policy that we've had for a long time. I want to continue that. That's part of the reason one of my first bills I want to drop in the hopper is Every Child Eats Act, which is something that every child will get in every public school, which is a high protein meal that they actually will take home with them as well to make sure that our children are eating. That's a problem that we have here in Arkansas. We are one of the hungriest states in the republic, and I want to fix that. But I think that that is one of the Christian elements that I will not separate church and state from, is making sure that our people are taken care of. And that also means that the churches step up and do that as well. I think that we're failing in that department too. So I want to make sure that my local churches are doing better than what they're doing currently, and kind of take some of that burden away from the taxpayer, because that's what we're supposed to do as Christians. So I hope I can be a leader in that avenue.
We'll get into your policies after this question, but what has been the most enjoyable moment you've had so far on the campaign trail?
Just being with my people. I've traveled ever since I was around 20 years old. I've been traveling around 22, I guess. As I get older, I forget how long it's been, but ever since I was about 22 years old, I've been traveling the country and just being with my people and seeing and being around my folks. I mean, there's nothing better than Arkansans. We really are still that old Norman Rockwell, Mayberry kind of style life. And I hope that the rest of the country could actually emulate us. Actually say that on the campaign trail. I'm not trying to make Arkansas like Washington. I'm trying to make Washington like Arkansas. We lift a helping hand and just how our community stays together. Of course, unfortunately, because healthcare is so bad, how many events I've went to or I've witnessed, seeing how they raise money for children that can't cover, their cancer medication or whatnot. Our families here, and I say that because I feel like all of Arkansas is a family, and I've just enjoyed it and loved it. Working in Washington and other places, it can be really, really tough. So it's almost like a re-energizing thing to be back in Arkansas and being around my people, for sure.
Let's dive into your policy platform and let's start with foreign affairs. China. You say on your campaign website that China is the greatest evil of our time. Why do you believe China is the greatest evil of our time?
Well, first of all, China is really big about not only in our country but around the world of posturing. And what they do is they send in their agents. We've had three in our own universities here in Arkansas that have tried to steal our agricultural secrets. So what they do, and something that I've stood against the White House about, is I am not interested in having 600,000 Chinese students come to my universities because we've had problems with it here in Arkansas. What they do is they send their sleeper cells out into other nations. They steal our intellectual property. Then they go back to China. They make it at a cheaper rate, and they're destroying our products. But also they are investing in private equity firms here in America that then buy our corporations, such as Sears and Roebuck. You think of Payless Shoes and those different types of companies. And what they do is they buy them, they shut them down, they use loopholes that I hope to fix when it comes down to bankruptcy laws. And they're making a killing out of it. But not only that, they're replacing a production line here in America. So they know that they can't take us home militarily. We also know that they're trying to get the semiconductor chips from Taiwan. That's why I'm so adamant about bringing those back to America. I think it will actually save Taiwanese lives if we start producing those things here in America, because they produce 90% of the chipset. Of the important chips that are in the marketplace. So it's a system to where they're extremely intelligent individuals when it comes down to how to break down a nation. They've done this in Africa as well. They funded the infrastructure in Africa, but with rates that they never could pay back. So China owns majority of the rare earth minerals there in Africa. That's why the president's so adamant about, hey, we'll help you, but we want your rare earth minerals so that China doesn't get a hold of it. And also they're the architects of BRICS, and BRICS is trying to replace the American dollar with their own currency, which will cripple us at the knees. So these are major issues and problems that we face with this, and I want to address it and fix it before it becomes an actual World War III situation. I think we can do it in the marketplace. I think that we can start building things back here in America, and that way there's no bloodshed and there's no loss of lives of the Chinese. I'm not worried about us losing lives here in America on our soil, but I'm very worried about what the damage we will do to China when you unleash the dogs of war. America can definitely defend itself, but I don't want to be in that situation. I want to protect us and keep people safe and just check their what they think is their authority and power.
You say that you want to fight China in the marketplace first and foremost. You don't want to get entangled in a military conflict,
Right.
but what situation, in your view, would have to happen for America to jump into a full throttle military conflict with China?
Well, I mean, they're already posturing in the South China Sea. I mean, that's where Taiwan, I mean, we're hoping that that doesn't happen, but we cannot allow China to control the semiconductor chips. I mean, that is a major issue. I mean, it goes in our aircraft, it goes in those computers and cell phones, and everything that we possess pretty much has one of these semiconductor chips in it when you're talking about technology. They cannot possess those, but they also cannot have Taiwan because it is such a strategic area in the South China Sea. We've kept a wall border there ever since World War II, and we need to hold on to that. But also BRICS doing things that are illegal. So that's Russia, that's Brazil. That's when we're posturing, or they're trying to posture so much in Venezuela and in the southern or our side of the hemisphere. And I still believe that the Monroe Doctrine holds. This is our side of the planet. Y'all mess up yours, but you're not coming to our side. And they are. I would say that the new Axis powers are trying to try to replace America. But the problem is, with every minor fault that our nation has done in the modern time, it's nothing compared to what the horrors of those nations are. And we really have to make sure that we stay on top, because I think that we are still and remain the only refuge of peace and prosperity that you can achieve in this country comes in America. So we have to be very, very careful how we handle it, because I think the president, as much as people think that he is foaming at the mouth war criminal. He's not. I think he does things precisely. I think he does them effectively. I mean, instead of killing a world leader, we captured them, and he will he will be held accountable and face trial here in America. That's not really happened. Most of the time, we bomb them, and I think that that's inappropriate. So what I like to see is no bloodshed if we possibly can. Sanctions don't work. We know that. That's why we use tariffs, so that it will condition the American people to buy American products. But my job, because I have 1 million people in Arkansas, is to bring that production back. And I think AI, machining, or machinists, and those different types of things that we can do through 3D printing, we can start producing our own products again and produce more of a product line. Those ancillary products that go along for Ford Motor Company and GM and those places like that. So we do have a domestic product line again, and then China becomes irrelevant. And I think that's very, very important for us to look forward to in the future. And then that way we actually don't fight them in a war. And I will be honest with you, if we do, they will be eliminated. And I hate to see that. Because there will be hundreds of millions of people that will be casualties in that situation if you really want to if you really want to unleash the dogs of war. And I don't want to see that. And I don't think the president does. And I hopefully, and except it's Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton and people like that, those are the only individuals that I ever see that are always calling for war. But I think that when you wage powerful weapons like we do, you wage them with responsibility. You do not wage them with so much anger. I think that's what gentlemen are supposed to do. And that's definitely how I will lead in Congress, for sure.
We'll get to American manufacturing in a second. You mentioned it. You also said in your answer about President Trump's capture of former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Should America consider capturing Chinese President Xi Jinping?
I think that's a step too far. And there's a different situation. So if the China, I mean, honestly, if the Chinese say, hey, he's been elected incorrectly, right? Well, this is not accurate. We've asked them, hey, to step down. And this is something that, the Biden administration put a $20 million hit out on the guy. That's really thuggish to me. I mean, why do you need to do that when we can intervene in that situation? I think the difference is this is on our side of the planet, okay? I think that the president is doing exactly what I would do. This is the Monroe Doctrine. This is our side of the planet. China and Russia are now trying to use this as a place to set up shop to attack us in mainland USA, which, Venezuela is not that far from us if you really want to consider where they're at in South America. So I think it's a completely different ballgame in that situation than it is China. But if the Chinese, if he acts in an inappropriate way, firing nuclear weapons, attacking us in some way, I mean, I wonder, do we consider new warfare when you shut down, Verizon, when you shut down our banking system, when you shut down all of our things here, when we're talking about the internet? Is that cause? It possibly could be. I would have to look at the situation and to determine it. But if trillions of dollars were stolen or hundreds of billions of dollars are stolen, then yeah, he's a criminal at that point. And if we can do it without killing him, then go right ahead. If that's the problem, without bloodshed, sure, go right ahead. And that's what happens when you're the most powerful nation on earth. Like I said, if you can wield the weapon but not have to use it, I don't have a problem with it at all. I know that some people think that that's a big thing. That's a major thing to say because you're taking a world leader and you're arresting them. But would you rather be arrested, or would you rather our men and women be boots on the ground? Would you rather see hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens killed? If we can prevent that and prevent a world war, then why not do that? I think that's a better option. I think that the UN is overzealous. I think that they throw their hands up in the air anytime America does anything. I mean, when you have some place like Iran over your the moral guideline for the world, I mean, I think they're a comical joke. And it is one of those things. We're number one, so we get to do kind of what we wish. And if they want to do what they wish, then they need to be number one in that situation.
American manufacturing. On your campaign website, you say that we need to bring back smart tariffs. What do smart tariffs look like?
Yeah, so I'm a Republican, so we hate slavery, right? And when you talk about communist nations, when they're using Uyghur Muslims and they're using Christians and they're using people that they don't like to build our products, those are the products that I think we put the highest tariffs on. I think when it comes down to products that are national security issues, then we put a very high tariff on those. And what it does is it conditions the market here to be competitive, to be competitive again, where it's not. I think you also look at private equity firms that are international that own American-owned corporations. I don't think that that should be possible, definitely when it comes down to a national security standpoint. So what I'm trying to prevent is our nation to becoming a nation of services. So where we just have hotels and tourism and that type of thing, which is what Europe is subject to. I don't want to do that. For 70 plus years, we were the world's great producer. And then what we allowed with NAFTA and different things of that nature is we paid companies to actually leave our nation and go somewhere else. Well, we need to make sure that we focus on tax plans and also things that will actually generate an economy back here again through production. So that does mean that in my tax plan, what I would like to see is that you have retainment of employees. So we know that big corporations usually do a mass layoff, mass firing every 5 years. Well, we're not going to let you do that anymore. You're going to hold on to your employees, and by doing so, we'll reward you with less taxes. Why do I say that? Because the more people that are working that are making $70,000 to $80,000 a year, that's less people that are actually on assistant programs for the government. So that means that we should, by mathematics standards, need less money in the actual government to fund these people to eat and health insurance and different things like that. And then it also fixes the issue and problems that we have with Social Security. We should meet an equilibrium at that point. So the answer truly is production again. So that's what I want to see. And that's where tariffs come into place. We help corporations in that department domestically. I told everybody I believe in free open markets within the borders of America, but I will defend my products tooth and nail across the board and not be ashamed of doing so, because I believe in American labor and I believe in American workforce. And I think that's how we build a nation that's strong again, to where we're not in a COVID situation where we're relying on the South China Seas for products, because it halted all production in this country. Just a full, almost a killing of our production here in America.
And the concerns from those who do subscribe to free market values that tariffs get passed on to the consumer, and that's why consumers are frustrated or maybe complaining about cost of living right now. How do you respond to those critics who say tariffs are not a good idea because they get passed on to the consumer?
Well, they are a tax, and I've never denied that they aren't a tax. I know that some people try to say that it's not because they want to win favor, but my thing is I'm fine with the removal of an income tax and replace it with a tariff. And that, to me, would condition the American market system back into American production. So I have no problem with it being called a tax. That's what it is. I've never lied and said that it wasn't. I don't think it should be across the board on every product either. But I think that if we lower income tax, then it's yet again another equilibrium. It's going to be hard because I'm pretty sure that when I am sworn in as the next congressman, will I be in a House of Republican leadership? Probably not, unless we make some drastic changes. So it's going to be very difficult for me to get my tax plan passed because for some reason, the opposite side of the aisle doesn't think that corporations are good. They view them as an evil empire, just as I do China and Russia. But the thing about it is those corporations are what support our economy and support the American family. I've told everyone, I don't want anybody having a job with $17 an hour. So I would prefer to see people in careers that they're happy about what they actually do on a daily basis. And then they work there for 30 years. And then they say, you know what? I'm proud of what I built. Look, when I joined GM or Ford or Boeing or whatever it may be, look what we accomplished while I was there. And they're proud of that. That's what I've come from, was people that worked at companies for 30 years. And they're so proud of what they did for a living. And you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think we need to get back to that. But right now, under the current structure with subsidies and all of the things that the government is doing, I mean, the Democrats say it, and I don't think they're necessarily wrong. I think that the greatest, welfare child in America right now is corporations, and I'm not really a supporter of that. Like I said, I'll defend them internationally, but here within the borders of this country, you're going to have to survive on your own. I did, and my family did. My small businesses do, because you know what? When you own a trucking company and you go down and you buy Goodyear tires for your truck, there's not a government, there's not a politician that's sitting there with a check to write that check for you to pay for those tires. That's not how it happens. But it does if you're FedEx or UPS or JB Hunt or one of these bigger corporations. Yeah, you get subsidies where you shouldn't as a big corporation, which then hurts the small business, which is a Republican policy. We want community-led Businesses, we want small community because that's the heart and that's the heartbeat of America. It's when you live in communities where you love one another and you do go to church together and you do all those types of things. That's what I'm trying to bring back to the Republican Party that I feel like we've kind of lost a little bit in the last 15 years.
Let's segue into election integrity. It's something that you placed on your campaign website as a part of your platform. You're running for federal office in our country. States and municipalities and counties run our elections. Why should people trust a federal lawmaker to promote election integrity?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, actually, where my voter integrity goes by is for federal officers. So, the Constitution gives me the authority, it gives us the authority to determine how our elections will be held. So, state and local, I don't care what you do. But when you're talking about people that are going to Congress, people that are going to the Senate, and of course the presidency, I think that there should be equal. It should all be the same. And why I say that is, I need to verify who you are before you determine the most powerful person on the face of the planet. And I don't think that that's inappropriate to ask that. I think what is inappropriate is when the opposite side of the aisle says that African Americans are not capable of having an ID. Okay, well, I grew up in an all African American community, and I live in an African American state. Okay, I've never met an African American person that doesn't have an identification, and I've never met one in Arkansas that says, "Hey, you know what? I don't want an ID to vote." No, everybody in Arkansas is on the consensus. I want to know who you are before you go cast a ballot. I don't think that that's too hard to. I don't think that's too hard of a subject to bring to the table and say, "Hey, I need validity of the person that's casting the ballot." I don't care if it's paper. I don't care if it's machines. That doesn't really bother me. I want a paper copy that is verifiable because I've worked in healthcare and any industry that you work, taxes for businesses. It's kind of wild to me that people are like, "Oh, well, that's such a bad deal if you have a paper validity." Well, no, I want validity of how the ballot was cast. Yes, that is accurate. Yes, I can go back. I can do, adjudication on the back end to make sure that these things have done correctly. I don't think anything that I'm advocating for is wild and crazy. But when you do see that people want to be able to cast ballots online and through their cell phone and these different types of things, no. And we have to put a stipulation on that you cannot do that in this country. So I just would like to iron out, make sure that these policies are accurate for. The House of Representatives, for the Senate, and for the presidency. I think that's very important that we do that. Instead of just having it all over the place and counting ballots 2 weeks. And the thing is blue states get into it with red states. So then some blue states are like, well, we'll count ballots up to 7 days after the election. Okay, and then some red states are advocating that you only vote on one day and that's it. So it's one of those things that I think we need to bring clarity to it, and I think that we need to sit down and have a true conversation about it. Because to me personally, second to my salvation, that's the most important thing that I possess is my right to vote. And, I think that it's wrong that we politicize it in such a manner. I think it should be done effective. It should be one of the easiest things we do, but it's one of the hardest things that we possibly do in this country is to count ballots. And I think that is ridiculous and it should be accurate.
How would you separate, though, as a federal lawmaker making those kinds of reforms? States have the mayoral race, the state legislature race, your congressional race, the presidency, all on one ballot. So how would you separate
You'll do just like we
federal?
already do. So there's states or cities like New York City that allow illegal aliens to vote, and they vote differently on local elections and state elections than they do federal. So that's already happening. So what's going to happen is if you come in, you're going to vote one tally. So one page of your voting is all local. You can do ranked choice voting or however you want to do that. States need to fight for how they want to do it. And then the second ballot is a federal, and that's how you're going to cast that ballot. So, technology is very advanced. This is not anything that I think is too complex. But if you want to do ranked choice voting or however you want to for your local offices, and that's what you've chose to do, then you do that on the front ballot. And then the second page ballot, that's your federal office, and that's how you cast your ballot. Of course, that's going to be in the weeds. And what I want by the time 500 other people have touched it, who knows what will happen. But I would like to see that at least for our elections, there is consistency in all 50 states with how we do this.
And how would you then create, let's say, like the primary system, for instance, to choose nominees for parties for
Right.
federal office? Would each state have a say in how they can conduct their primaries? Because each state has a unique culture in the way that they
Yes, I
nominate
had to pay
nominees.
$30,000 to be a part of my primary, to run as a Republican. I paid almost as much as every other Republican in the country combined to run against an incumbent. So there could be stipulation that there's no filing fee, but all primaries are on the same day. That could be a possibility. I mean, that's a lot of hashing out later on to determine. It could be that there is a primary that you know it could be closed primaries where we say that there's a party system that's set up. I wouldn't like to see that as a federal officer that's being done, but it could be a possibility. But a lot of that would be hashed out in what they wanted, what the Congress wanted at the time. If they wanted it to be Republican and Democrat only, and that they're closed primaries, which I think is a very unwise situation. Or you could have it set up to where they're open primaries, but only on this day. So we would have a super Tuesday, where on Tuesday, March the 3rd, everybody votes in a primary every election cycle for their federal officers. I think that also breaks up some of the money that's in politics. I think that, someone that works as a political consultant, I can tell you that there is a lot of milking of the system. We send billions and billions and billions of dollars each election cycle to get the folks we want elected, and it's just hemorrhaged. Sometimes I've always comically said the way that politicians waste money to get to office, no wonder why we're $37 trillion in debt. I've run a really tight budget on mine, but I think I would like to see a clearing of the system, a cleansing of the system, I guess I should say, to where we're not running multiple different things at multiple different times. And then, of course, you have special elections and how you handle those as well. If someone unfortunately passes away or is removed from office, how that process will work, because you have certain times that governors won't allow that to happen. And maybe their state constitution says this is how they want it to be done. And, I think there needs to be a system to where we actually have consistency, and these are the rules and regulations for federal office. I mean, when these things were set up for us, you're talking about wagon days, right? Where it took you, 2 months to get to the Capitol. So it would have been important for you waiting until the next election cycle, or a multitude of different things that play into that factor. But things are a lot different now, and I want to keep it traditional. I don't want to really change anything. I don't want any radical change to it. What I just want is consistency, because everybody's trying voting a little bit differently in 50 states. As someone that's worked in that environment, it's very confusing sometimes. Like Virginia had some kind of crazy rules there for a little bit. New Hampshire did. So you just kind of have some kind of crazy ways of doing things, and then you just kind of want to know, well, what comes out in the wash from that? Why did you make it so complicated? And I think that would be better for us to have it to where we have some consistency and make it easier for the American people on that front to at least know, hey, I got to go vote on this day. And I think it will also help with people going to vote, because some places have elections. Seems like every 6 weeks. They're having some kind of election, school board, or judge of some kind, or something else, and people just get voter fatigue, and I think this would kind of help out on that as well.
One more question relating to this topic, and then we'll get your final thoughts. There were concerns a few days ago with Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard visiting Fulton County in Georgia. They're investigating ballots and potential foreign threats, and people are wondering. And I had asked you earlier about state versus federal, local versus federal. When does the federal? When is in your view, when does it go too far when it comes to the federal government getting involved in elections or with election offices?
So, you know, everything's a case by case basis on that. So what you have is you have your Secretary of State that can always reach out, or who, and that's another thing. Who determines your elections in your state? Most of the time, it's Secretary of State, or it is for Arkansas. So whoever your lead apparatus is for your elections in your state, they have the ability to call in and say, "Hey, something fishy is going on. We need you as an investigative, individual to come in." So the FBI, you've got all the different departments. I mean, we've got a laundry list of them that can be called in that situation. With this affecting senatorial candidates and a presidential candidate, it's not odd to me that yes, the federal government would step in and say, "Well, these are federal elections, and we have jurisdiction here," right? So I think if it's a situation where it's a mayor, right? Unless there's been some federal crime that's been committed, then no, I don't think the federal government has any responsibility. If it is a federal candidate, then I think that they do. But like I said, it's case by case. I don't know what's going to happen in that situation. I've ran elections in Georgia during and post 2020. So um, my post record in Georgia is impeccable. So I don't know. I don't know how the situation is going to come out. I got to watch and see what goes on that. It's just too early for me to say, oh, oh, this is the smoking gun or whatever it may be. I don't know. So, I never say I don't know, but in this situation, I'm going to have to because I got to wait till that plays out in the court of law or after we read things of why this is, what the necessity was, if it is the smoking gun that we were trying to find or whatever it may be. I'm not sure, but we will find out. And when they find out, if you want to have me back on, we can discuss it then. But right now, it's just too much up in the air. I got $38 trillion to worry about to wrestle. And I'm worried about my folks in Arkansas. I've got 10,000 students that can't read and write. I've got a majority of my students and my young kids are hungry. So I'm more worried about that right now. And I'll let Tusi do her deal. Right? She's great. I think she'll do great. I think that she's a very honorable, honest woman, and there must be something there for her to go into. But if there is overreach, if there's ever any overreach, which, for instance, when the FBI spied on 3 million Republican bank accounts and they were held accountable for that, nothing happened. They just said, whoops, yep, we did it. We shouldn't have, we won't do it again. Well, I don't think that was far enough. So I definitely think there's a lot of federal overreach in our government that I do want to bring to hilt. I mean, that's the same thing with, the Patriots Act. I think the Patriots Act is illegal. I think it violates the Constitution. And I think they probably maybe use this as an apparatus. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't done enough research on it to determine that of where I stand on the issue. And of course, I've got to read the documents before I make my opinion fully.
I appreciate that, and you would be welcome to be back on the show in the future. Every candidate gets a chance to say anything that they would like. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm doing this because I'm a millennial, and I think it's our chance to sit down, and I think that if we can take power, I think that maybe we can get some of this nonsense that this tit for tat kind of stuff that they do in Washington. I think that we can kind of squash that. We can put common sense and just kind of sit down and say, hey, what's the best thing for the American people? And I think that when you put new, fresh blood in, I think that's what you get. I'm running against somebody that's been there for 11 years. In that amount of time in 11 years, during COVID time, he made $9 million in the stock market, and then he made $1 million in the stock market this year. He's made a couple of million in between there. I think that having people that will go in that, the first thing in my office will be a signed documentation that proves that I'm not trading any stock. I will not have any type of investments that are being made, just my salary. And I'll even have the breakdown of the taxes that I pay for that salary. That I have to pay out of that salary because I want to be honest. I want to save the American public. And I've already told people I'm only going to do this for a maximum of 10 years if I even get those 10 years. So that I can leave there at 42 years old and I can go and I can be the best private sector American I possibly can be. And I hope that when I leave this office, I hand the keys over to somebody that is far smarter and far better than I am. And I think that that should be the agenda of every person that seeks office in this country is that we want to make this nation the best it possibly can be, not worry about what the party heads have to say or what private, those private folks that want to give us all the money for campaigns, what they care to say, but just do what's right for the American people. I trust and believe in the American people far more than I do any politician in Washington or any talking head on the television. And I think that if we can get back to there, we can have that beautiful life that I had as a kid. And I'd love to have that for the next generation of children here in America.
Chase McDowell, thank you so much for being on the program and doing this interview.
Of course, I love doing these. These are one of my favorite things to do.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You as
That's the
well.
end of the interview.